Hi friends, so in the last video, I talked all about the different industry funds out there, particularly the top 10 in Australia in terms of their advertised performance and how sometimes those performances weren't all they were cracked up to be, especially when you compare them against how you would particularly like to invest, or if you compare them against other industry funds and their advertised options. So in this video, I want to talk about what is the cost of each fund and is the retail option that I displayed at the end better on a cost perspective or not? Before we get into that though, I want to take you back to the previous video where I talked about those industry funds, the respective investment options, and what the performance was of those funds. So you're looking at that video now. So go and have a look at that if you haven't seen it yet. But basically, what I showed was the Brighter Super Fund in the balanced option, the Uni Super Fund in the balanced option, the Australian Retirement Trust in the high growth option, the Australian Super in the premix balanced option, the Aware Super Fund in the high growth option, the Hester Super Fund in the balanced growth option, Spirit Super in the balanced option, CBUS in their growth option, Rest in the core strategy option, Host Plus in the balanced option, and then I also showed a retail fund in a balanced index fund. Now, all of those industry funds, the reason why I chose those investment options to compare against is because that's what they're advertising to people when they talk about their performance numbers. And as I showed in this video, on a risk adjusted basis, the 10.22% that I'm showing there right now was actually much better on a risk adjusted basis than any of the other industry funds that I compared. Because as I showed here, that balanced index option inside the retail fund had just underneath 50% growth assets, which is significantly less than any of the others. So now that we quickly revisited what I did in the last video about the industry fund performances, let's have a look at those costs. What you're looking at here is the cost of each of those funds with those exact investment options and the underlying fees on those options. And in this scenario, I've assumed a pretty reasonable balance of just $400,000 in the fund. So basically what I'm saying is every single one of the funds that I compared here have exactly the same amount of money in it. So it is really on a like for like basis what I'm about to show you. So at a high level, you can see down the bottom here, I have all the different funds. Now, some of them are short-handed for their funds, such as ART, that is Australian Retirement Trust. But let's have a look at how they performed. I think you can already see, though, which one's going to come out better. But let's actually dive into the details. So Australian Super in their option, it was $2,682 on a $400,000 super balance. On a like-for-like basis, Australian Retirement Trust was $3,342. Rest was $2,995 or nearly $96. Host Plus was actually the most expensive out of all of them, which probably comes as a bit of a surprise to some people out there because a certain, I guess, influencer in the past, very famous for writing books around finance, really spruiked Host Plus. Now, here's the trick. It depends what underlying option you're choosing these funds, but the option that I've chose in both these videos was the one that Host Plus advertises. So in this case, their cost using a $400,000 balance in that investment option with all of the underlying fees of the super fund was $4,158. Aware Super came out at $3,292. Hester came out at $3,292 too. A big surprise to me, exactly the same. CBUS came out at $2,852. UniSuper, reasonably competitive at $2,576. Spirit Super came out at $2,747. Brighter Super came out at $3,106. And then finally, that retail fund that I showed you in the previous video came out at the cost of just $1,803 per year. So I guess what we're trying to say here is that not only did that retail fund with the indexed option perform better on a risk adjusted basis, it also killed all of the other industry funds on a cost basis too. That's the all-in cost on a $400,000 balance whether it's the underlying investment management fees, whether it's the administration fees, whether it's performance fees, whether it's transaction costs. It doesn't matter what's in there. This one performed better on a cost basis too. So the cost of your fund is a very important consideration for sure, but you also need to consider the performance of each fund on an after fees basis, because a fund that is technically more expensive than the next one might have much better performance. In this case, however, the retail fund was not only better on a risk adjusted performance basis, it was also better on a cost basis too. So, in my opinion, the retail fund with the balanced index option would perform much better on an after fees basis than any of the other industry funds that I showed both in this video or the last one. And just a reminder, if you would like to learn the core strategies that you need to understand to build your best retirement, but not only that, the actionable steps that you need to do to get from where you are now to your ideal retirement, then head on over to retireschool.com. Here you will find out how we can help you in that journey toward your retirement. See you soon.